Hello, everybody. This is David Wiedemann, and this is 5 Minutes of Thought, episode number 35, Tin Cans and String, part 1, Mindful Decoding. What's the big idea? Well, this is it. We want to draw your attention in this episode to one little step in the communication process called decoding. We're going to suggest that there's a way to attend to decoding consciously, bring your mind to it, that should be considered a core competency because it's so useful. We call it mindful decoding. So we'll talk about this today, first by talking about decoding, then we'll talk about mindful decoding. We'll ask, so what? We'll reflect and hopefully wondrous things will ensue. Let's start with the view of the universal communication model. Of course, communication is a complicated system, and this is just representing one unidirectional communication from the sender to the receiver. You know us well enough to know that we also think a lot about communication as a loop, feedback going back to the individual who sent it from the receiver. This whole process can basically be doubled back and folded over on itself. But we're not going to talk about that today. Instead, we're just focusing on one aspect of the communication process, decoding. Decoding is what's happening between when you hear a message and you decide what it means. Let's unpack this a little bit by expanding the circle. Okay, here's the message coming in on the left, and there's it having meaning on the right as it goes into our brain. There's a few things that happen in between. First, of course, we've got to hear it. Next, it's made up of information. In this case, 4 ideas are in it. Then it goes through something we call the filter, which is kind of our frame, the way we understand the world, how we make meaning out of things. On the other end of the filter, it gets altered slightly by the way that we understand it before it goes to the brain. You probably already noticed something fishy going on in this dramatic reenactment. Specifically, the 4 ideas that are going in before the filter are coming out looking differently. One idea makes it through, one idea changes, and 2 are kind of eliminated. Of course, there's no equivalence between these two things, and this is what we call the gap. This is a gap that happens in the normal function of the decoding as you're applying all the information that's coming in to the filters that you have to make meaning, your biases, your assumptions, and so forth. It's happening sight unseen all the time. And our point in this presentation is to bring our attention back to that, to create what we're calling mindful decoding by taking the camera of our curiosity and pointing it on the functioning of that filter. That's mindful decoding. Let's look at that a little bit. Let's expand that filter function circle here. Here we have the 4 ideas on the left and the 2 ideas coming out of the filter on the right. And the first thing we see is the space where the ideas coming in are confronting the functioning of the filter. And in mindful decoding, what we learn to do, and you can get quite good at it, is to point the camera of curiosity at that point of confrontation between the filter and the ideas. What is this filter? Well, it's anything that's going on in your mind that might shape the ideas as they come in. Assumptions, biases, fears, worries, definitions, previously thought things, associations, things your mom said, things you want to avoid. Anything that you have going on as you're trying to understand how to navigate the world and predict what's going to happen and stay away from things you want to avoid. All those things are in play as you're processing and filtering ideas. And our goal in mindful decoding is to slow those down a little bit and just watch them. To ask ourselves, what comes up in me as I'm listening? As this hypothetical drum set idea comes in, for instance, is that triggering something? Do I have an anti-drum set bias? Am I afraid of the noise that's going to come? Did my parents tell me that I would never be good at the drum set, and is that affecting the way I'm thinking here? That's what's at play, and that's what we're looking for in mindful decoding. There's another place to look too, another place to put the camera of curiosity, and that's to compare the output of the filter with the input of the filter. To say continuously, is what I'm hearing here really what I'm being told? Or is what I received what was sent? How did my filter intervene? And this is a question you can ask yourself. It's also a question you can ask the person who's talking to you. You can say, here's what I heard. Is that what you meant, for instance? So there's 2 ways to get at a better understanding of decoding and to practice mindful decoding: by watching the filters on the front end and by looking at what they turn out on the back end and comparing that back to the inputs. Okay, what happens if you start to do mindful decoding? Well, this is what happens. Watch the output on the other side of the filter. If you're starting to be mindful about the filter, you can learn to increase that output, change the things that are coming through the filter, making them a little bit more accurate. Even you might learn to add data sets that you previously weren't able to pass through. So you're getting a better picture, a more realistic picture of the world, a more true understanding of what's really going on, and that's what you want. So what? So what? Increasing the accuracy of the output of your decoding filter. So what? Here's the so what. Here's a couple of people. They've got great ideas. They want to learn together by sharing their ideas. They're going to have to talk to each other to do this. That requires communication. Communication isn't going to be working that well if your decoding is more of an impeding process than a decoding process. So if you sense that there might be a filter in between you and what you're trying to understand, you know what to do. Grab your camera of curiosity and point it at that filter and watch it and see if you can't train yourself to let some more information through. All right, let's pause and reflect. Did this presentation trigger any thoughts? Grab those and develop those and work on those, and you might be on your own way to learning something awesome. And the second invitation is the cubicle challenge. If you really like this presentation, you might try popping up from behind your cubicle to see if you can explain this to the guy in the next cubicle. With that, I think we can say we did what we set out to. We talked about decoding, we talked about mindful decoding, we asked so what, and we reflected, and hopefully wondrous things ensued. This has been 5 Minutes of Thought, episode number 35, Tin Cans and String, part 1, Mindful Decoding. I am David Wiedemann. Come and join us at 5mot.org for more of these 5 Minutes of Thoughts and leave your thoughts on our thoughts. And I leave you with an easy step forward. What if you want to practice mindful decoding? How can you do that in the real world? Here's a 3-step process. Go find 2 people you can watch talking, maybe in a meeting, for example. Turn on your camera of curiosity on how they're talking and look to see if things are being filtered. Listen to what's said, listen to how people understand what's said, and see if there's a gap between. If you try this out, come visit us at 5mot.org and let us know how it goes, and have a great day.